Hi guys, Rudo here. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I review African literature. I hope you're having a good day and a fantastic week. So for my video today, I am going to be reviewing 4 new Zimbabwean artists which you need to experience. And I promise you, these are fantastic books which you love or hate. Either way, I think it's good for readers, for us to experience good books and bad books. But from my experience, from what I've read so far, I think these are some of the best Zimbabwean writers, upcoming writers, if I should say, and I think you should experience. So for book number 1, we have Painting a Mirage, and this is by Samantha Rumbidzai Vazhure. I'm pretty sure by now you must, if you watch my videos that is, you should definitely know who Samantha is. So she is the owner of Carnelian Heart, so that's a publishing house, and she's been helping a lot of artists, upcoming artists, to publish their work. I managed to publish one of my stories, or 3 of my stories, on the anthology Brilliance of Hope, and fingers crossed by February I would have finished my own book, my own anthology, and she's also I'm going to be using her publishing house to publish my book. So I'll read the synopsis of the book so that you get a better understanding about it. So Painting a Mirage is a story about the coming of age of UK-born Ruba, who is raised in a privileged, dysfunctional Zimbabwean family and returned to live in the UK at the age of 18. Ruba yearns to escape her toxic childhood, but relocation to the UK invokes a bitter confrontation with the illusionary upbringing, and she realizes that she does not need to continue conforming to the dictates of her past. As Ruba navigates life in the UK as a first-generation immigrant, she begins to understand what it means to be a black minority living in a meritocracy. During her journey of learning to live independently, Ruba stumbles into marriage. Will the grass that seems greener live up to her expectations? So this is part 1 of a trilogy, and it has a lot of themes, okay? And it's not a light read, I should say. It has a lot of heavy topics, and as someone who grew up in Zimbabwe, I kind of like resonated with Ruba because I also saw similarities with her family and my family when it comes to like how they tackle mental health, how they treat women, the patriarchy, you know, all those kind of things. And there's so many topics, and she vividly explained and colored the picture for you to understand. So I would say this is a heavy read, a heavy and a serious read. And if you want a bit of drama, definitely. And I did write a couple of topics or a couple of themes that are in the book. So there is patriarchy, how a father was being all good and knowing, and that actually is kind of like a Shona culture. I'll say Shona culture because I'm Shona culture, and she's Karanga, so they're kind of similar. Or I'm Zezuru, she's Karanga, but they're kind of similar. I think they all fall under the Shona culture. I hope I'm correct. If not, please correct me and forgive me. And there's classism. So Ruba sees this when she moves to the UK, and she meets one of the people who used to be a maid at the house, and the maid said something very profound. She said, you know, now that we're here, this country, it literally treats you like the same person. There's no this thing of classism which they used to have back home, because Ruba, she was kind of like the boss. She was born in a rich family, and then when she moved here, she kind of had to have her own life. She had to start from scratch, and she was at the same level as the lady who used to be a housekeeper at the house. So it showed like there's classism in Zimbabwe where people treat other people who don't have money differently. And I know it's a known fact in most areas, in most environments, but it really shone a light in this book. There's also racism. There was a bus incident, you know, how she had to tackle racism, because when she was in Zimbabwe, they were all black people. Then when she moved here, she had to, you know, kind of deal with that. And also, having come from a rich family, she kind of had to tackle racism, being treated differently. And even though Ruba is humble, like her character in itself, she's quite a humble person, but you can see that all of those challenges that were facing her, they were kind of challenging her character, which I really liked because she ended up having her own voice. So there's also rape which is very triggering. I'm sorry for not warning, but there's also rape, how she talks about how she was treated, and when she tried to talk about it, no one could really listen. And it also kind of showed how, like, in our culture, I'll just say Shona culture, okay, probably different from other people, but in Shona culture, usually when this kind of thing happens, they kind of ask, oh, what was the girl wearing, why did you go there, what did you do, what time was it, all of those things. Rather than tackling the rapist, they blame the victim. So there's a lot of victim blaming in this book, and she kind of has to grow up with it, because it just doesn't happen once. It happens again when she moves here, when her cousin's husband tries to do the same thing, and then when she reports it, her cousin completely isolates her. So it's kind of an ongoing thing which happens, where people actually blame the victim. There are also evil women, sorry. Toxic family. So here Tete, I would say she would pimp her, not like in an obvious sense that she's running a brothel, but in the way that whenever Ruba she would visit her aunt. Her aunt would have all her male friends saying, oh, Ruba, she's of age now, look at her body, look at how she is. And people would just be saying, oh, like, people say that it just means that she'll grow. No, that's kind of like, that's grooming, and that leads to people thinking, they can just do whatever they want with the child. So she didn't really have any protection. Even when she didn't want to do anything, she just ended up doing it because it seemed like it was the right thing to do. There was also mental health in men and in women. When a husband killed himself, they blamed the wife without even understanding. I don't know, like in this book, there's a lot which has to do with patriarchy, how women are just plagued and blamed for so many things. Some of the things that, you know that someone has a mental illness, but it will just be like, oh, it's the wife. Oh, it's the wife. Like the mom, she got blamed when her father's brother, I think he killed himself. They were like, oh yeah, it's the mom who killed him. Like, people go through depression, people go through all of these things, people need help, but I don't know what it is. They just end up blaming the women. So I was just like, okay, this is something which I've understood, because when you're growing up, it's always the women who are the witches. It's always the women who are the witches. And I remember talking to my friends, I was saying, there's actually going to be an age where we're going to get when people start saying, oh yeah, we're the witch of the family, we're the witches of the family. And this is something which is very common, not a good thing, but it's quite common, where people just say, oh yeah, she's a witch, because they said that they're successful, or maybe they're just different. They could be witches, but it just seems like so many different things that it ends up you being a witch. There's also how to handle grief. So when she goes through a challenging time, I think that was when she miscarried. I'm pretty sure she did miscarry, and then how she had to handle the grief with her husband. Women being blamed for bad luck and witchcraft, as I said before. There is postpartum depression, the breastfeeding and the bonding. When she ended up having a baby, how she was having a hard time actually bonding with a child, because even within a marriage there were a lot of difficulties. The thing is, with me, when I read this kind of books, it kind of feels heavy on me. I kind of have this thing of connecting with characters, which is why I think I hold grudges with characters. It doesn't make any sense, but I kind of hold grudges with characters. I'm like, okay, why do they do this? So I wasn't really happy with how her husband treated her, and then she found emails from years ago while she was going through their hard time, and they'd just gotten married, and then she found out that he had been cheating like a long time ago, but still he was cheating. Murora duties, even when you're tired and breastfeeding, so Murora, that's like a daughter-in-law, so she had to do all these duties even when she just given birth, but she was expected to do all these heavy household chores and stuff. And this is something very popular in the Shona culture, where the new or the old or a daughter-in-law, when you go to your husband's household, especially let's say in the rural areas, you have to do like these laborious things. You have to cook, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning and sweep the yard. You have to do, it's a lot which you have to do, and some of the things they're just a bit inhumane. You're like, okay, is it really necessary? But apparently it's culture. Body shaming. I hate body shaming, okay? People were just commenting on your body, oh, you're too thin, oh, you're too big, oh, you're too fat. And it's something which I've noticed a lot of. I would say, the thing is, I don't like generalizing, so I'll just say the people who have experienced saying it. A lot of Zimbabweans, especially family members, say before they even say hi, it's like, oh, you've gained weight, or you've lost weight, or why are you so thin, or why are you so fat. Like, there are many reasons why people go through different kind of weight gain or weight loss. It could be because they're ill, or it's simply none of your business. People grow up, people lose, people gain weight. I don't understand the fixation of people wanting to know why someone has gained weight. Like, for me now, if someone comments on my weight, I'm aware that I've gained weight. Okay, I live with myself. I definitely know that. So they were not really aware of how it could be a sensitive matter. Like, for me at the moment, it's really a sensitive matter. So I know I've gained weight. You don't need to tell me that. I live with myself. So it kind of like, I resonated with that. And it was very eye-opening how people take it very lightly. People have so many different opinions about the way you look. It's actually exhausting, but I don't know, I guess it's a thing of entitlement. But she also highlights it in this book, how she had to work hard. I think one of her exes would comment on how her body was, how he wanted her to look. You know what? If you're dating someone and you feel like they've gained weight or you don't look like the way they look, just leave them. This whole thing of saying, oh, you'd look better if you're like this, unless if it has to do with their health, because you don't know what they're going through. I think when it comes to things to do with the weight, people are very, very insensitive. They're just like, oh, you should look like this. And also because of social media, everyone expecting you to look like a BBL model, like someone who's just had a BBL. Not everyone is that kind of body. There are people who are actually happy with their bodies, but just because you don't deem it to be a good structure, it doesn't mean it's not. So I think it also comes up in this book. And also her father, oh my gosh. So her father, he was this rich man. He was a politician, I believe, and he was just super, this guy who everyone in the community looked up to, but he was very abusive to his family. He was cheating on her mom. Her mom ended up having cancer and she died, and he was super insensitive. I remember days, because the parents would come to the UK and go back to them, and until the mom she ended up moving to the UK because she couldn't handle her father's cheating. And then the dad, he followed, but the mom, she could not leave because she was saying, oh, I've been with them since I was young, which is what happens in most households or with most women. Not a lot these days, I must say. A lot of women now are just, if they can't handle it, they'll just leave. They'll be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. But I've seen that I've seen women like Ruva's mom, where they stayed, where the husband was cheating. He would even buy sex toys for his girlfriends and lingerie, and she would see them, but she would say nothing. She'd be like, oh yeah, he's my husband. And it was kind of like being a wife, that's what they say. Being a wife, you should be strong, you should stay with your family. There's this saying which says, in Shona they say that varume ipwere, like men are children. They say men are children because they want to justify what they do. But for me, I'm like, okay, if they're children, why are we being led by children? It's infuriating, and it's just mixed up. Choose, do you want to be a leader or do you want to be a child? Because it seems like when it favors man, that's when they have to say, oh yeah, men are children, you just have to be brave, you have to pray for your marriage, you have to do all of this. I don't know, I'm not patient for that. But anyway, intrusive parents in the marriages. So her in-laws, Ruva's in-laws, when she got married to Baby, that's what she used to call her husband. They had met when she was back in Zim in high school. I think he was her first boyfriend. Then she came here, and then she helped him to come here. And then there was a bit of tension. He just started acting weird. Okay. And then his parents, they became so intrusive with what was going on, what she was doing as a wife, how to take care of the baby and all of that. They seemed to not have any boundaries, There was also the love that Ruva had for her mom, even after she passed away. The mom, she was there and she was becoming to realize herself, what she liked, but then she ended up dying of cancer. I think she died when she was sitting on the toilet, and the Ruba also has abandonment issues from what had happened. So this is a fully packed book, and these are just some of the topics I managed to write down when I was reading. I tend to write down topics so that I don't forget, but it's a fully packed book, and I think she's releasing the second and the third one because of the trilogy. I think she'll be releasing them this year, I think. So if you want a serious read, a bit of drama, a bit of reflection, if I should say, if you want to understand a bit more of the Shona culture and how it weighs down on women, I would definitely recommend this. And I would say out of 5, because I'm a mood reader, at the moment I'm trying to move away from heavy books, but with how it's structured and how exactly straightforward. And oh yeah, by the way, this is a book for someone who likes things thoroughly explained to them, so it's like a step-to-step book, so you don't really get lost. But there are a lot of names, there are a lot of people, a lot of names, because it's an extended family, so you have to keep up. But she also has like the names of the family members here at the back, so you won't be able to get lost. So if you kind of like, okay, so who's like Bamninita Farai, you'll be able to go back and then, you know, but you really need to pay attention because there are a lot of people. I will not lie to you. And I think that was to highlight the extended family and how much she had to go through. So I would say I would give this 4 out of 5 for the topics that it gives. And when it comes to themes, I would say for me, maybe because now I'm like into fantasy, I would say like maybe 3.5. But it's good for someone who really wants to read something heavy, something serious. Highly recommend it. Number 2, we have Green Shadows in the Kiya Republic, and this is by Farai Mudzingwa, a long short story. I would say this is one of the funniest books I've read in a long time. So I'll just give you a synopsis of the book. So Jumalo is a young man in a dystopian and mythical post-coup Zimbabwe with negotiable morals and simple needs. He leaves the city of Harare with his money snake to conduct urgent business with an ancient river god in Kariwa. All around them, green shadows loom and threaten their mission. All the duo wants is to Kiya and enjoy nice things, like the winners in the Republic. To Kiya though, as Brother David reminds Jumalo, is to summon the consequences of encounters with the ghosts, gods, girly girls, and grim guardians who move in mysterious ways. So I read this book in one sitting, and I was so mad when I finished it. I was like, wait, I need more. I even DM'd Farai. I was like, okay, I think we need a part 2 of this because you can't just leave us hanging. So this book, it made me laugh. Okay, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I hadn't read a book which made me laugh like that since maybe The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives, I think, and it's been a long time since I read it. So there are so many topics. So this book, as I read in the synopsis, is about a guy called Jumalo, and he's just trying to make everything work in a very corrupt country. Like, it's so corrupt. I think it kind of resembles what's going on at the moment in Zimbabwe. So like, it starts with him waiting for fuel, and then he has this snake called Cashington. Cashington is sassy, okay? I think he was by far my favorite character in the book. You know, I hate serpents, first of all, but this one, I could see from afar. I wouldn't want to meet him or, you know, talk to him or anything, but I really like this character. So Cashington, he was a snake which vomits money, which is something which is very common in Zimbabwe. Is to do with witchcraft. If you want to be super rich, some people, they have snakes which vomit money for them. This is quite common knowledge. For those who don't know, it is quite common in Zimbabwe, where people who want to be like super rich, they have these snakes which vomit money for them. Unfortunately, Jumalo had like a bad deal. He had Cashington, who only vomits like local currency. So in this case, I would say he vomits bonds, which are being used in Zimbabwe, and that wasn't a lot. You know, he was still in the very poor bracket, even though he had a snake. So it kind of seemed like Cashington didn't really have a purpose. And then he wanted to pimp up Cashington for him to end up vomiting US dollars or the higher currency for him. So he ends up going to this area in Kariwa where there's an old man who helps with all this thing, but he ends up dumping Cashington. But Cashington comes back and his girlfriend, but it's a lot. The shadows resemble corruption, so the more corrupt you are, the darker the shadow. So there's a guy with a Lamborghini, like he had a cloud over him, so everything it's kind of like everything is green. So because it's like dystopian, kind of makes sense. Dystopian is like it's like, how do I explain dystopian? It's like something that happens after the civilization, when everything has been destroyed. From my understanding, there's very rich dialogue that expresses humor and colors the stories. I said Cashington is one hell of a funny snake. He's very sassy, he's got attitude. Loved it. Even Jimalo, he was fighting back with Cashington. It's a funny thriller dystopian comedy, so those are the themes which I managed to pick from the book. I could be missing something, but because I was enjoying it so much, I didn't have time to write down things, because I was like, okay, I need to get through this. And then there's David the ghost. David, wow, I did not see it coming. Like, I thought, I was like, okay, this guy doesn't eat. Maybe he's just not one of the, the corrupt people. Until at the end you realize that he's a ghost, and it kind of reminds me of Peggy. So if you know of Zimbabwean stories or myths, I don't know if Peggy is a myth or what, but she was like a prostitute, a ghost of a prostitute, I think, who died, and she would pick men from the bar and then she would go and sleep with them. And then the men, she would go to a house with them, from what I've heard, and then she would sleep with the guys, and then when the guy woke up, he would be on top of a grave. So they would have slept with the ghost. So David was giving me very Peggy vibes, and his dialogue, he was just like, oh yeah, I'm a ghost. And Jamal was like, well, you could have told me that you're a ghost, and you said it so matter of fact, like, oh, you didn't ask me if I'm a ghost or not. I'm like, how do you ask someone if they're a ghost or not? So it's that funny, it tickles your brain and your funny bone and everything. And it mirrors the current Zimbabwe built in a dystopian world. So it's, from what I read, I would say that's exactly what's going on in Zimbabwe. We're just missing the green clouds, the green shadows. That's what we're missing, but it's pretty much what's going on at the moment. So of course resonated with it. As I said, Cashington's charisma, then Jimalo is a good guy, image trying to survive. So he would say, oh, I'm a good guy because I'm not that deep into this witchcraft or having snakes and kind of things. So even with all that's going on, he still sees himself as a good guy. And now in my mind I was like, you know what, you are kind of good, but I think this is what corruption does to you. Even when you're doing something very bad, you'll be like, well, at least it's not as bad as this, So in my mind, I was like, you know what, Jamal, I completely understand you. But he was still a bad guy. And then there was a Ishman for himself and snakes for us all kind of thing going on. So many people had snakes. Even his girlfriend was a very funny relationship that they had. So for Cashington to be able to survive, he had to suck on his girlfriend's breast for milk. So he needed his girlfriend, obviously, for his own pleasures and also for Cashington to drink. Because if Cashington didn't have his milk, he would turn vicious. He would be feral. He would not be able to talk to you. He would become like literally a snake, which doesn't talk. So he had to move fast to get Cashington his milk. And I was like, in this situation, I don't know how I'll be like if my boyfriend was to be like, oh yeah, by the way, Cashington is coming to drink some milk from you, we'll get so much money over. It was just, it went there the book went there where you'd think it would never go. So it kind of left you questioning yourself. And his girlfriend, of course, like what I said, was an Ishman for himself. She also had her own thing going on for her to be able to survive. So she had someone who was driving a range. It was like a manager at a petrol station, I think, and she had to do what she had to do to get things done, So it's a very funny book. And then Chipo's character, that's Jimalo's loving girlfriend, he loved her, even though they were very dysfunctional dysfunctional relationship. You know, even at the end when she comes back, I think I was like, okay, what's going on? Even though they ignored each other, it's like you think, okay, now it's over, they've moved on. Cashington comes back, he's now a US dollar spitting snake, because he had actually abandoned Cashington. He ran away with Chipo, and then he left Chipo at the house, ran away, didn't want to see Cashington anymore. Cashington comes back, is like, oh yeah, I found Chipo, by the way, let's do this, I'm back and I'm better, you know. So it's very funny, but also something that I noticed was how there's alcoholism. He's a functional alcoholic, Jimalo. He would survive on alcohol. He wouldn't even eat anything, but he would drink alcohol like morning, day and night. It's the only thing that he had. I think he only ate once. All this time he was just drinking and drinking and drinking, and you'd see that it was him trying to survive everything that was going on. So I would highly recommend this. I would say I'll give this a 4 out of 5 out of everything. I loved it, and I think you would definitely enjoy it, and you'd probably finish it in one sitting. Like, I'm tempted to read it again. I usually don't go back to books, usually, because I just feel like once I read it once, I don't want to lose that, you know, that feeling or that magic which I have at the first time. So I would highly recommend it, and you will enjoy it. And if you want to talk more about the book, if there's anything that I've missed out, by all means, I'm so happy to discuss it more. And Farai is very friendly. If you DM him, I'm pretty sure he'll get back to you, because I managed to reach out to him and he was able to get back to me. So I'm pretty sure if you have any questions or anything, you'll be able to get a hold of him. And his book is found on Amazon. I think all of these books that I have, you can find them on Amazon. So feel free to buy a copy and support Zimbabwean artists. Book number 3 is Sirens, Tales of Youth and Love by Leroy, Mthulisi, Ndlovu. And I bought this book last year. I've had this book for a very long time, but as I always say, as a mood reader, it takes me quite a while to get into books. But I also think, at the back of my mind, I think I judged the book by its cover. I was like, okay, but it's good. It's really good. So it's an anthology with a lot of short stories, different short stories, and it's interesting. It's more on the dystopian side, if I should say. Most of the stories, there are a lot of dystopian in the dystopian universe, if I should say. And I had a few favorites, so I'll kind of talk about my few favorites, but it has quite a lot of stories. So just to give you guys a backstory, the first one, really, it's a young barely functioning alcoholic finds love in the midst of wanting by his mother's ghost, and loses that love in the most heartbreaking way. A young boy discovers he's been made into a cannibal without his knowledge or consent. There's another young man who walks into the light and back again. Do not make the mistakes of thinking it's a collection about young men with myriad problems. They are women too, and what women, sorry. The penny whores who aren't quite what they seem, the lover who reads the prophet and takes sexual liberation to new heights with tragic consequences, and of course the inimitable one known only as the thoroughbreed. Some of the stories are shocking, all of them appealing. So they are very good stories. As I said before, I had a few favorites. So I'll start with this. The first one was very heartbreaking. That's Victor's song. Victor's song was heartbreaking in the sense that, you know, he was just a guy who didn't know his dad when he was born. Like, his parents were very young. I think his mom was a teenager, and he just longs to have, you know, that kind of love, that kind of fatherly love, but he couldn't have it because his dad he literally just vanished when he was born. And then he found a friend, but he'd grown very fond of his friend. But then when the friend got married, as adults do, they have to move on with their lives. He kind of felt like he had lost a friend, and then his mom died, so he literally didn't have anyone. So I think this story, it's a story from Victor's point of view, and it focuses mostly on love, but in a very heartbreaking way, like in relationships and also in friendships, because he his girlfriend, the one he ends up having, she ends up cheating with him with the guy next door, and then in rage he literally beat the brakes out of that guy. And so you can see that his heartbreak keeps going and going. First he loses his friend. When he gets married, I would say he didn't really lose him, but because the situation was now different, the environment was now different, he couldn't just go to his friend and be like, oh yeah, let's go out, let's go talk, let's go doing this. He now had a family, but he felt so abandoned, he kind of ended up pushing his friend away. There's a lot of alcohol. This guy would drink like no man's business. And also when his mom got sick, you know, she was literally the only person who was there for him. But then when she died, he was very lost. He ended up not taking care of himself, he ended up not doing anything. And then he lost his girlfriend, who he thought, you know, now I have someone who I really love. And then when he walks in, she's having sex with someone else. So it's a very heartbreaking story from Victor's point of view. And I think at the end he ends up committing suicide, and also he ends up finding out he's HIV positive. Like, it's a lot for this guy. So this was the first story, and at the start I was like, okay, this is heavy, but I was like, okay, let me go on, because it's an anthology, so you get a different feel of different stories. And then I read The Hunt. I think The Hunt left me shocked. Okay, I remember I was just like, what did I just read? Okay, so this story, The Hunt, is to do with a young boy coming of age. He lives in a very loving family in a dystopian world, and he goes hunting with his dad. His first hunting, they go out. So you can tell that this is after our civilization, because they talk about aliens, you know, what do they call them again? I'm forgetting the word that they call them, but they're talking about aliens and how they came. They're mutants. They call them mutants. Okay, they call them mutants, and how they came and how they look like, you know, ghosts, but they're not ghosts and stuff. And now they were saying that they didn't have any food at all, so they had to go like months and months and very far for them to be able to get food. So you're not supposed to eat the mutants, but then he recalls another time when his dad brought meat, which they saved, which was very sweet. Oh, amazing. Then he goes hunting for the first time with his dad, as I said, and his dad starts telling him like, oh yeah, by the way, you see how we're struggling to find meat and food and all of that, you know, we had to go to certain measures for us to be able to get this food, you know, it's not from. Then the boy was like, oh my god, is it from mutants? Then he was like, no, it's not from mutants. And then the boy starts thinking, he's like, okay, so where is the meat from? And then he's like, yeah, by the way, we went to a village, but because we needed to survive, we had to kill them for meat and stuff. And so he ends up realizing the sweet meat was actually him eating human beings. It was quite dark. I was surprised, but I did not see it coming. It really snuck in there. So I was like, okay. So it shows how desperation kind of like pushes people to do certain things. And what I like about his stories, Leroy's stories, is that they're just stories. You know, there's really no deep meaning to them. They're just stories which you read to enjoy, just to get out of things. And I've noticed that for us Africans, including myself, usually when we write stories, we want there to be a lesson, but it doesn't always have to be that. We can just write something lighthearted, something funny, something dark, which doesn't have to do with any lessons at all, something that you can just enjoy. And there's also the story of Sirens. Sirens is about a mysterious woman who this guy meets. He was also giving me Peggy vibes, okay? He meets this woman at a bar. They dance, they drink, they do all the things, you know, like a love at first sight for him. But then she just disappeared. He never gets to see her again. She never comes back again. And this guy, this story is called Sirens. That's the title of the book also. And there's a lot of suspense in this story. I like suspense. I don't like being fed too much. I like, you know, like reasoning to say, so what happened? So this book kind of gave me that, and I really liked it. Then there's Underdog. Underdog, it was funny. Still in the dystopian world. He loves dystopian, as I've noticed. It was about a guy who was, heading. He had his cattle, and his cattle, they just started going missing. People didn't know what was going on. He hired people to guard his cattle. because he was one of the greatest farmers in that area. He was paying people, and then the cattle would just go missing. So he was like, okay, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. He said it is cool. I think that's what it's called. And then he waited to see what was taking his cattle. In comes this thing that looks like a dog with wings, but no one believed him, so they thought he was crazy. So like I said, these stories, they're just stories which you just want to read. They don't necessarily have to have like a deep meaning to leave you thinking like, oh, okay, what did I write? But I really enjoyed this book. I think that's why last week I didn't really do a video, because I really wanted to finish this book so that I'll be able to give a good review about the book. And I would give this 3.8. I would say 3.8. I really enjoyed it thoroughly. And like I said, I think I judged the book by its cover. It's true, you can really judge a book by its cover. I was like, okay, this is a very different cover. I was like, okay, what am I getting into? But at the end, I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would recommend for anyone who just wants a lightish read, something just for you to pass time and also for you to discover different Zimbabwean writers. So this is going to be my part one. Of course, over the year I'm going to read books by other Zimbabweans. Some I've already read, so I'm just waiting to compile all of them so that I have like enough for me to actually do a long review, and also to appreciate Zimbabwean writers who are coming up or doing amazing work. This, of course, you can also find it on Amazon, and I hope you enjoy it. So last but not least, we have Shona Bedtime Stories, or Donhodzo reZororo. That's in Shona, and this is by Sarura Kids. So kids actually wrote this book. So if you have little ones who you'd like to start introducing to bedtime stories, I would definitely recommend this. So it has 5 stories, and this way written by kids. So this is a book for kids by kids, which I think is great, because you know, would know better about kids than kids. So number 1, first of all, that is, the book is centered around representation, which is very important. Representation is also one of the reasons why I started reviewing African literature, mostly because as Africans, you know, it's good to see ourselves in books. And then this one, because it has pictures, so you kind of see like different characters with beautiful skin, beautiful brown skin, you know, they're different skin, different complexions. So of course children all come in different complexions, but it's also great to see, you know, like children this kind of complexion, when they see themselves in books, they kind of resonate. So I don't know if you've also seen this new Disney movie called Encanto. I'm a bit off at the moment, but so many people were so happy, like so many kids that would resonate with Antonio. So he's the smaller kid who got his gift at the end, so he's like dark skinned. So many kids were very fond of that movie, and it also made them want to watch the movie because they would see someone who looked like them. So that's why representation matters. So also because this book is written for kids by kids, I'm pretty sure if other kids see other kids writing stories with characters that look like them, it will also encourage them to read and write. So story number 1, it's a story called Tsitsi Mwana we Roji. So that's Tsitsi, daughter of the Roji. So it's like in both in Shona and English. So you know, you can take a pick. If you don't understand Shona, you can also read in English. If you don't understand English, you can also read in Shona, you know. And I think they also have different books with different languages, if I'm not mistaken. So Tsitsi, daughter of the Roji, is about being different, how being different is beautiful. So Tsitsi, it seems like Tsitsi lives in the West, so like in the UK, somewhere where there are a lot of white people, and she's kind of having a hard time finding people who look like her. So it kind of like gets to her how she can't find someone who looks like her, and she's looking everywhere, and she's like, oh, I wish I looked like this, I wish I was like this, I wish I had this color skin tone. But then everyone who she meets, they're like, Tsitsi, you're beautiful as you are with your brown skin, you know, you're different is good. She even meets a couple of twins, and they're like, oh Tsitsi, you're very beautiful, we wish we were different. So it's kind of like an encouraging story of how being different is a good thing, you know, because so many people think that if they're different they have to fit in. But because of Tsitsi, she was encouraged, you know, to love herself as she was. So it's about being different, how being different is beautiful. She felt out of place and she found comfort in knowing more about her heritage. So at the end, we have a mom reading about the Rosary people, how they are, the culture, how they looked like her, and she was very happy and content with that. So that's how representation matters, and how children being able to know and understand where they come from and who they are, it actually strengthens them, and to also love themselves. And we have still on that one. Sorry, no, it's number 2 now. Sorry, it's a bit jumbled. But number 2, it's a bed of clouds. So it's another story about a boy who wants to go to sleep. So I'll just show you guys the picture so that you understand what I mean when I say representation matters. Like, you see, this one is just a story about a kid who's about to go to sleep, and what they're seeing, it could be something they've been seeing during the day. It doesn't really have to have a lesson. It's just, you know, a story. And a bed of clouds, it allows young minds to imagine and dream about things they are curious about. So he's a very imaginative young boy. So he's imagining all of these things, and there's also like representation, as I said before. Book number 3, it's called story number 3, it's called Our Home. So this focuses on an extended family, and as most Zimbabwean people, not all of them, but most people, we've grown around our extended family with aunts and uncles, with cousins, you know, a huge family. So in this story, this girl, she's talking about her siblings, her family. So it focuses on extended families and knowing how family dynamics work in the Shona culture. For example, reZororo calling the baby Sekuru. So it's like in Shona culture, we have this thing where it could be like your uncle's child, you'd have to call them uncle, even though they're younger than you know. So it really highlighted that, and also it also showed how there was some Zimbabwean names that I'd not heard in a very long time. So it was kind of funny. There's like Take Sure, there's Never, there's No Matter. So this kind of names, the names that I've heard when I was growing up, was like, okay, this is very good. It's kind of like helping me feeling a bit nostalgic. And it also talks about different occupations and roles of members of families. So in this story rather, the women, they're not only doing jobs which you think women are supposed to do, things like, you know, tending to the house. They do like serious jobs which you would not think, you know, they will be doing, like mechanics, being teachers, all of these heavy duty things. And I think that's very good, because it also encourages young girls to do whatever they want when they grow up. They don't necessarily have to stick to the norms of having to do things that they don't want to do. Or they can be mechanics, they could be like bus drivers, they can be whatever they want. So I also liked how that was also shown in the book. There was also story number 4, that's I'm not afraid of a crocodile. And this is written by a 3-year-old called Ano, which I found to be very, very impressive. So the story is about a girl who's not afraid of crocodiles. And you know, like how kids will be like, oh yeah, I'll eat the crocodile and stuff, I'll beat it, you know, it will never touch me, and that kind of thing. So that kind of innocence, it kind of like, you know, jolts you to say, okay, it's very good. Like sometimes, obviously crocodiles are fearsome, like they are very frightful, but no, they're not fearful. You know what I'm trying to say is they're very scary, okay? And it shows the innocence of kids and the kind of questions they ask and the things that make sense to them. It will only make sense to a kid to turn a crocodile into a sandwich while still alive, okay? And I think it's good to accommodate those kind of things, because I think when I'm around kids, I haven't been around kids in a long time, but when I'm around kids, I like hearing like the thought process, how they think. These things that they say, like, oh yeah, I'll fight a crocodile, like, okay, so how would you do it? To them it makes sense, it shows innocence, you know. And I think sometimes, without knowing, of course, we're trying to protect them, but we kind of inflict our own fears into them sometimes. But yeah, for example, like I said, she wanted to turn the crocodile into a sandwich, she wanted to turn the crocodile into soup or into ice cream. That's something only a child would think of, unless if you're someone who's into that, then okay. But it also says, like, while the logic is straightforward, it can be also fatal, because obviously it could seem like, of course, I could fight a crocodile if it's in a tree, because you have more leverage than it has. But at the end of the day, it can also be fatal. So it's good to see like how kids can also imagine, and also having these kind of stories out there. I don't know if you've read stories kind of like the Gruffalo. So those are, what's her name, Julia something, I'm forgetting her last name, but the Gruffalo is a story which really doesn't make any sense. The Gruffalo, or the witch on the room on the broom, you know, those are stories which are like, you know, there's a dragon saying I'm as mean as I can be, and you know, I want to have witch and chips, you know, very creative. So these are the kind of things that goes on in children's minds, and I'm here for it. I like it. If it makes sense to you, I love it. Number 5 is called My Child. So it's about a mother talking about how much she loves the child, and how much the child loves them back. She marvels at the child's growth and the beauty, and the book and the story is kind of like how a mother is like very fond of a child. So I think that's also a story which you could tell like your child if they're about to go back to sleep, for them to know and to understand how much you love them. And yeah, it has 5 stories, all very, they have pictures, and they said representation matters. That's all that's in that too. This one is the one about the crocodile by Ano, the 3-year-old. So you can see that, you know, she's very, very creative. That's the crocodile ice cream. It shows you'll be talking to her dad will be like, okay, I don't think that's something that will happen, but okay, if it makes sense to you, it makes sense to me. And I also liked how the graphics of this one, you know, they're like stick figures, and it's been a while since I've seen something like this. So it has different drawings, different illustrations, if I should say, of what people or the characters look like. So as you can see, these are the twins who were saying we wished we were different from the first story. So I would say this book, I'd give it like, oh, I don't have a kid yet, but if I were to read it to a child and also hear what they think, I would probably say I'll give it like a 3.5. Okay, and also because it's a book by kids, for kids, so obviously I'm not the target market. So if I were to ask a kid, they'll probably be like ecstatic, they'll probably love it. So I would highly recommend for you guys to buy this for your kids if you want them to learn Shona, or if you want them to learn English. It comes the story is translated from Shona to English, from English to Shona, so either way you'll be able to learn. So this is my recommendations for this week, and I hope you guys take time to look through them. And I'll be doing another video where I'll be reviewing upcoming Zimbabwean writers, because I know we know of some of them who are quite popular, but there are a lot of upcoming writers who have amazing books, and I'll try by all means to read as many as I can. Obviously other people who are also reviewing African literature will be doing the same. But that's it for me today. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye.